Well, let's begin with a developing story about the U.S. Missile Defense Shield, based in Europe and put in place to help protect European allies as well as the U.S. Now, for months, President Obama has said this is necessary to counter threats coming from Iran. But leaders in Russia are opposed to the shield, and especially its placement, which many Russian leaders say is actually aimed at Russia's missiles. And just last week, Russia's top military official threatened preemptive military action on the missile defense facilities. And this whole thing has certainly caused a rift in U.S.-Russia relations. I want to talk now about all of this with Bruce Gagnon, the coordinator for Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. Hey there, Bruce. I know that this is one of the Obama administration's major national security projects. How do you see this program?
Well, I think it's, number one, a payback to General Dynamics Corporation that helped Obama get elected. They gave him collectively, the Crown family, who in 2008 were the majority stockholders in General Dynamics. They gave Obama $500,000 and also raised money for him within the military-industrial complex. And so they, right after the election, Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine reported that Obama received more campaign donations from the military-industrial complex than the right-wing war hawk John McCain did.
So but certainly this can't just be about, you know, favors for friends if it's going to cause as much of a rift as it has with other countries, namely Russia.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But I think the payback is a key element in it. Because the Aegis destroyers that are being outfitted with missile defense systems are made by General Dynamics. I just wanted to get that point in. But beyond that, absolutely, the United States is now surrounding Russia with these missile defense systems and an expanding NATO. And I believe that the reason is because Russia has the world's largest supply of oil and of natural gas and significant supplies of oil. And by now we should know that the Pentagon's primary job in the world today is to serve as a resource extraction service for corporate globalization. At the same time, the Obama administration announcing a pivot of U.S. foreign and military policy into the Asia-Pacific region is also surrounding China with these same missile defense systems. So clearly restarting a new arms race that, again, will benefit these weapons corporations.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring up China. This missile shield, has said to be put in place to help contain China. We also saw that the U.S. will be adding several hundred, maybe even 1,000 troops in right off the coast of Australia. So it is. It is interesting what we're seeing there, but I want to say, I mean, it's not just leaders in Russia who have a problem with this plan, with this missile defense shield. I have a letter here written by the National Academy of Sciences. This calls into question many parts of the system. Now, the people who wrote this, these are top people here in the U.S. whose job it is to advise the government on science and technology, and they say they have doubts about whether this missile defense shield will even work properly. Talk about that.
That's right. In that report from the National Academy, they're saying that there's been considerable delays, considerable cost overruns, and considerable technology problems with the entire missile defense program. And that in the end, it's less than optimal way to defend the continental United States. Clearly, though, I think that if one puts too much emphasis on the problems with the program, we forget that it's part of a larger strategy to control and contain both Russia and China. And that is, I think, the most important point to be looked at here, that indeed there are problems with it. But almost every big technology program that comes along has problems, and you give them enough time and you give them enough money, and they're going to work some of those things out. They've already used a missile defense system on an Aegis destroyer to knock a satellite out of space, showing that it could be used as an anti-satellite weapon. So there are considerable capabilities of these systems. And again, you give them a lot of money, and they're getting a lot of money, about $9 billion a year, going into the Missile Defense Agency. Over time, I think they can really make this thing a viable technology.
Well, Bruce, just sticking momentarily with the geopolitical aspect of this, of course, just today, Vladimir Putin inaugurated in Russia, sworn in for his third term as president. And, of course, much of the negotiating up to this point under President Obama was done with President Dmitry Medvedev. We know Putin has already said he won't be attending the NATO summit at the end of this month, in part to protest the missile shield, which will be formally deployed then. Talk a little bit about how serious this is for international relations and, in particular, for those between the U.S. and Russia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the hard line is growing between the U.S. and Russia. In fact, I see in mainstream media across our country here in the U.S. that Russia is increasingly being demonized, as is China. And I think there's a reason for that. And I think it's in order to make Russia and China the enemies in the coming period. It will benefit the military-industrial complex. But I think the greatest issue here is the competition over declining resources around the world. With the climate change that's happening, which, by the way, is our real problem, we should be investing in that rather than a whole new arms race on all sides. We should be dealing with climate change. But as we see the Arctic melt, increasingly they're now saying that the oil corporations are going to be able to do drilling for oil and natural gas in the Arctic region, which puts the U.S. in huge conflict with Russia, particularly. So I think that this NATO expansion and this missile defense systems going into Poland, Romania, Turkey, and soon other countries throughout Russia's neighborhood is all about trying to control Russia and Russia's access to resources, Russia's control of resources. And the same goes for China. The reason why we're surrounding China is because it's the only way the United States can really compete with China's growing economy, is control their access to resources.
It is certainly an interesting point you raise, how important of a role resources around the world and their increasingly limited supply plays in some of the decisions major countries make. Bruce Gagnon, coordinator for the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space, joining us from Brunswick, Maine.